Good evening, class. As you already know, I am Adesha, and I will be summarizing Chapter 9 called Rehabilitation. Wilson starts off by introducing a study done in New York that sees if the programs developed to help the criminal would have any effect on recidivism. The report came to the conclusion that rehabilitative efforts had no appreciable effects on recidivism. For those of you who don't know, recidivism means a tendency to relapse back into criminal ways. In another study done by Wilkins, she claims that the issue with combining social psychology and treatment is that there is a negative effect, undermining the current methodology regarding effectiveness. We have learned also the struggle to get people to change their behavior from good to bad is quite a feat, and the cost effects come off to some is questionable. A key quote in the chapter explains that rehabilitation requires producing equivalent changes in unwilling subjects under conditions of duress or indifference. An idea very similar to rehabilitation is the indeterminate sentence, which means the person who committed the crime is not allowed to be released from prison until he is deemed ready by a patrol officer or someone who has seen him make significant improvements in his behavior. Wilson believes that this idea is impractical because of the many prisoners and few parole officers or board members that would be able to decide if the criminal is ready. Another reason he believes it is impractical is because of the many different factors of recidivism. A study done of the parole system in New York City calculated those who were granted parole and those who were denied it. Statistically, there is no significant difference of those returning back to prison based off of those paroled or not. 10 to 11% from each group went back to prison within the year that they conducted the study. Now, in the late 70s, the shift went away from the rehabilitative strategies to ones that focused on deterrence, such as those of incapacitation and retribution. Everyone was convinced that rehabilitative strategies had failed except Warren and Palmer, who attempted to test delinquents by their personalities. The Community Treatment Program, or CTP, located in California, was what Warren and Palmer concluded to be the reason why delinquency decreased. Mixed results came back. The counselors and people in charge of seeing the delinquents improve left out some crucial parts of their findings because of the relationships they made with criminals and the excitement that they had of having their program succeed. Lerman had more to discuss about CTP, establishing that it did not have an impact on youth behavior that differed significantly from the impact of the control. The community focus of the experimental program turned out to be somewhat exaggerated in the fact that the great majority of experimental youth were placed in detention at least once and were detained repeatedly in order to maintain control over them. Indeed, the youth in the experimental community program were more likely to be sent to detention centers than the control group supervised by regular parole officers. Martinson, one of the guys who believed in the rehabilitative strategies, said that no one had the evidence to prove that nothing worked. In the next section, the delinquents that were studied were divided into two groups, the amenable and the unamenable. Glaser believed that the amenable were the conflicted, meaning neurotic, and the unamenable were the power-oriented, meaning those who lack a mental set of conventional values and use their ability to manipulate others to get out of things. This case went hand in hand with the CTP results that Palmer identified. The results stated that the power-oriented had a higher arrest rate. That was because they found ways to manipulate or deceive all who tried to help them get back on the straight and narrow, such as counselors. In essence, they were con artists playing the system, but they still got caught. It also concluded that if you were amenable, the treatment may make you less criminal, and if you are unamenable, then the treatment will make you more criminal. Amenable criminals were given a new term explaining in depth why they were more susceptible at escaping criminal ways is Gavin. Young, anxious, verbal, intelligent, and neurotic. They were proven to have more to lose if they continued on the track of criminality. And the next subject discussed in the chapter talked about the rates at which criminals were committing crimes after undergoing rehabilitation. The Murray and Cox study attempted to find out what happens to repeat delinquents when confronted with different sanctions of various restrictiveness. The study was shown that a staggering 82% were rearrested, but the rate at which crimes were being committed was decreased by about one-third. Criticism of this study appeared as well, saying that rehabilitation can involve some type of degree of coercion and sometimes even intimidation. With that, a question arose, as in, does a decline in arrest indicate a decline in criminality, or does it just mean that there is an increase in the skill of not being caught? With the answer being difficult to find. The idea of being labeled as someone who would increase their likelihood of being caught for subsequent crimes, or the school of criminal students increasing. That is, those who don't get caught. The Murray and Cox study is important because it employs rates rather than proportions as the outcome measure, or even because they suggest that something might work, like the combining of deterrence and rehabilitation, which we have been talking about this whole time in class. The last portion of the chapter dealt with defining rehabilitation. According to Wilson, it meant interventions that are nice, benevolent, or well-intended. Wilson concluded the chapter with the Murray and Cox results that rehabilitation or deterrence with any desirable changes may produce results, not because of the type of strategy, but how strict it is. That ends my summary of the chapter, so now I will pose 2 questions. 1. Are some criminals more willing to change due to rehabilitation than others? For example, are robbers more likely to change their criminal ways than drug dealers, or vice versa when put into rehabilitative programs? And my second question, do you believe that treatment would make a criminal more criminal if you were amenable? Well, I hope this makes sense for you all, and see you on Thursday.